Points there from some of the parents. Now talking with our panel of experts here, what did you see there that is something you think, hey, that's what parents need to look for in a quality child care center? What were some things that you noticed?
Well, I noticed that the students were able to get a lot of individual attention. There was really a focus on what were the needs of the children in that environment. Mm-hmm. And often when you're in an early childhood situation, there's a lot of focus on what the teaching process is, but not necessarily about the learning environment for the children. And so what I saw there was down to the child's level, a real focus on individual children's needs and what was necessary for that child to have a stimulating, exciting experience.
Why is it so important? We hear a lot about the importance of early childhood education and why those first 3 to 5 years are so crucial. What is it about that first little window of opportunity?
Well, we've been fortunate in the last few years that the technology that allows us to see brain activity in young children, which is relatively new, and some really groundbreaking research studies have allowed us to see that children really are wired for feelings and an ability to learn from the very, very beginning. And for some people that's new, but the degree to which that is so has just become more and more clear. And so this period from birth to 5 is significant because so much growth happens. About 90% of the brain's neural connections happen in those first 3 years. And so in addition to the cognitive gains and the language acquisition and socio-emotional development that we saw evidenced in that classroom, a lot of things happen for the children that set the foundation for the future and for future skills they'll need in school or in their jobs or, in fact, just in their families or in their communities.
So that first few years there, that can have impacts throughout their life, basically?
Certainly. I think, the issue of high-quality care settings is very significant because there are a lot of research studies out recently that indicate that children who are in a high-quality care setting or in a home where the home environment is such that children are being stimulated and being provided those developmentally appropriate opportunities or the attention and the one-on-one caregiver interactions, that those children are more likely to have greater language comprehension and language expression ability, as well as greater math ability, and in fact even greater ability or skills really to think and to focus attention on specific issues, which is important much later in their life.
Wow. I know talking with some of the parents there, they mentioned cost is definitely an issue. It seems like even more so now. I think when we talked with Sharon Nichols earlier, she mentioned that it's difficult to find a good place, but I know that cost is also difficult for a lot of parents.
Cost is very difficult for a lot of parents, and in fact, it's one of the areas in which the Comprehensive Child Care Program has found a definite niche and where we try hard to help people within the community. Among the things that we've learned is that child care costs can absorb 10 to 25%, if not more, of a family's monthly expense. Wow. And in fact, it can amount to more than twice as much as what a family would pay for its housing, transportation, and food combined.
Wow. And of course, that's probably more of an impact when you're a lower income family.
Definitely. It is much more difficult for low income families to pay the kinds of money that are required to get high quality child care.
Does that sort of fit then into kind of I don't want to call it a downward spiral, but if you're low income, you're already facing certain challenges in life, and then if you can't afford quality child care, that kind of puts you even farther behind, I would think.
It certainly does. And in fact, it's one of the reasons why we work so hard to try to make sure that we're helping low-income families get their children off to the best start possible.
The Foundation for Early Learning is doing some work in that area in terms of, is it grant writing?
Well, grant making is one of our areas, one of our activities. Our mission is to support the profound learning that children experience from birth through age 5. And so that means providing resources and information. And so resources could be childcare, it could be childcare teacher training. We have a grantee the Child Care Resource and Referral Network in the state of Washington, which provides scholarships for child care teachers to get to advance their education, and that's specifically so that they can have some wage progression, which reduces the turnover, so those children have a consistent caregiver. An issue that you hit on around the issue of low-income families is that if low-income families can only afford lower quality care that's less expensive, well, that lower quality care is provided by teachers who make less, who then are less likely to stay, which then means the children can't develop an ongoing relationship. So our efforts are around public engagement so that the public knows how they can help, knows what children need, and also providing grants specifically to projects and programs that can be expanded across the state and support children and families.
Pacific Oaks College Northwest trains teachers to go into this field. What types of things, I guess, have changed in terms of what you're teaching teachers these days?
Well, we do a lot of focusing on really paying attention to the cultural needs of the child, of their family, and their community. Because when a child comes into a learning environment, the consistency of staff is also important, but there needs to be some congruency between what the child is experiencing in their care or learning or education environment and what's happening for the child at home and in their communities. So a lot of our programs, a lot of our classes really focus on looking at what are the developmental needs of children across social and economic, racial categories, and to really think about how do you provide a learning environment that meets the needs of the children who are currently sitting in the room, not to come up with one general sort of learning environment that is supposed to meet the needs of all children, because all of the children are very different. We also have them really think about how are they going to get continued training and development. That is highly important, I think, for any profession, and in early childhood it's critical, because ongoing training, whether it's workshops or classes or opportunities to talk with others who are in the profession, are really going to be important for stimulating the learning that takes place for the teachers and the caregivers, the providers, which in turn will translate into a more stimulating learning environment for the children.
Sounds like that's something that parents then also need to be very aware of as they're evaluating different centers, looking not just at, hey, they've got great toys here, but also looking at what type of people are teaching my children. Is that correct? Yes. What other thing? Oh, you were going to say?
Well, I was going to say that toys is always a difficult challenge, because what we as an adult might find interesting as a toy, and it may be an interesting toy, but there are specific stages that the child goes through where at 3 a toy isn't just interesting, but a grasping toy, a toy for threading blocks, develops a fine motor skill that children will use later on to write with. And so the more that parents know about what children actually do need at different stages, or just knowing that they have different needs in rapid progression, these needs change, and finding out the degree to which those child care providers are aware of that, are aware of places they can go to get information if they don't have any formalized education, so that they can provide that individualized learning environment. And then certainly for families, it is a big issue of looking at the culture that they come from, cultural values they have, and how that's going to play out in the environment where their child may be for more of the day than they're going to be home.
Absolutely.
It sounds like when you mentioned the different skills and different things that they need to understand, is it also important for parents to kind of look at the other ages of the children in the center? I'm thinking if maybe you're in a home care situation where you're bringing a 3-year-old, but the other children are all 6 and above, that creates a bit of a discrepancy in terms of maybe what types of games they'll be playing, or what types of...
Well, that would be a question you'd want to ask. You'd want to get an idea how much that teacher knows that there are different needs for those 2 children. Are there things in the environment that they can provide to provide a stimulating environment for both those kids? So I don't think people should count that out because that happens by any means, but I do think it's a question to ask.
I think also it's important to remember that children are learning and growing on a number of different levels and in a number of different ways. So the fact that you have mixed ages within like a family home care environment could be a good thing if you have a child who has no other siblings, for example. So it's an opportunity to create a learning environment where the children are teaching each other, so that the older children are bringing the younger children along with them. Children learn an incredible number of skills from each other. I'm always amazed to hear children repeat little songs that I used to sing as a child, and it's like, where does this come from? And it's because the children are passing things on down the line themselves. So it can be actually a very important piece of a child's development to have some children of ages outside of their own, as long as there are age-appropriate activities for all the children who are present.
Well, in fact, it's important to not only focus on the cognitive development of a child, but to focus on those socio-emotional relationships, so children can get along with their peers, so that that there's a good relationship between the child and the caregiver. That's at least as important as whether or not there are age-appropriate activities. Is how does that child bond with that caregiver, or how is that caregiver interacting with that child? Developing the emotional aspect and the social aspect of the child.
I know one of the things the city is concentrating on is just giving parents more options, increasing the overall number of quality care programs in the city. Do you guys look at those types of things? How do you evaluate?
Most definitely. We believe that there needs to be a wide continuum of types of child care within the community, so that parents have ample choice to make the decision about what kind of an environment is going to work best for their child. Some of the factors that we've talked about already today: definitely play into that. If you have a child, for instance, who is an only child, you might want to look for a situation that exposes them to other age groups so that they learn more about the social skills that are necessary, as well as other valuable developmental characteristics that help when you're with children of different ages. We do try to look at providing a way for more than what the minimum the state requires is available to children within the city. And the state standards look at minimal health and safety standards, but we're also hopefully identifying ways that centers can improve beyond that, the environment that they're providing for children. And certainly the cost issue is another factor that we work very hard to help families overcome. So we have subsidy programs that help pay part of the costs for families who need that assistance.
I heard just earlier this week someone talking about childcare costs, and she said the places she was looking at were $700, $800, $900 for one child per month. Is that accurate? That seemed
prohibitive.
Really?
In fact, a recent study released by the University of Washington suggests that childcare can cost more than twice as much as a college education at the university.
Wow.
And when you think about that, that's quite daunting for many families. If you have more than one child, I, for instance, have 3, and I have twins. And when my children were childcare age, it was quite expensive to find good quality care that I could afford for 3 children. And having 2 infants or 2 toddlers simultaneously certainly was a challenge for us.
The city has subsidies, though, available for families that are dealing with that?
The city does have subsidies, and those are funded primarily through dollars that we receive through the City Council and the Mayor, general fund resources, as well as voter-approved resources. The Families and Education Levy that was supported by voters in 1997 helped to provide monies as well for families who are not able to afford those exorbitant child care costs. So that's been a very wonderful thing to have available. About $4.8 million, in fact, is administered through the city for families who need help with childcare, as well as monies to help childcare centers and homes enhance the services that they provide to children.
Yeah, the city and the state, nationwide really, people are dealing with budget crises right now. Is the hope just that that money will continue to be there in the next couple of years?
Well, we are certainly hopeful about that. I know that our mayor and city council remain very committed to providing the resources available for child care supplementation. And we are aware that there are going to be some changes at the state level, which may mean that we'll have more families coming to the city to seek subsidy. The income limits that we have for the city eligibility standards, we think help families who not only low income but moderate level. For instance, a family of 3 can earn a gross income of about $3,600 and still qualify for some help through our child care subsidy program.
$3,600 a month?
Yes.
Okay.
$3,600 a month.
Okay. Good information. We're going to put a lot of this online for folks who are watching and want to get a little bit more information about some of the issues we've raised today. We're going to take a quick break and come back and tell folks a little bit more about what to do when their children get a little bit older and they're looking for childcare. There's some special needs that children have as they begin to age, and we'll talk about those when we come back. Thank you all for joining me.